All right.
Oh, I should probably have asked before now. Am I a co-host?
I don't know. How do I do that?
Let's try. Okay, good. Perfect.
Okay.
That's all we needed.
This is Spencer. He is a current fourth year, just submitted his rank list. He is the vice president of ACOEP, RSO. I've had the pleasure of working with him for a year and a half now. He is a former RN, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Former, I don't know what else to say about you, but Spencer's excellent. He has a lot of great experience, and someone that I would put trust in advising wise. So hopefully he can tell us a little bit about personal statements and the written application as far as URAS goes. So we'll jump in.
Well, thank you for that, Savannah. I am the best way I describe myself is a past and future nerd. And so, yeah, so this is a talk that I've actually wanted to give for a while, not because I feel like I am particularly specially equipped to give it, but because I think it is so sorely needed. And, you know, this is something that I don't think, if you're getting it from your school, you're probably not getting the right version of it from your school. And so we're going to discuss some stuff today because everybody agonizes over the personal statement. And in my eye and in the eyes of a lot of program directors, it's really important. It's important to have a solid personal statement because this is the part that's going to give your application flavor. The app itself is very dry and it's cut, you know, a lot of it is down to numbers, number of research projects, number of, you know, the numbers of your board scores and those. So this is what actually tells the program director who you are. And so I think this is really important, but that's also reflective of my values. So this comes with a few caveats that we're going to get into as we talk about it. The title of this talk is obviously Less Boring, More Sandwich, which hopefully is a little perplexing to you, but will be explained as we go. All right, this is our purpose. I'm just trying to share with you what I know to help you be successful, or what I think to help you be successful. This is the goal for you, and I promise that I'm not a boomer. This is the only meme I'm going to put in this whole PowerPoint. So this is the situation I want you to be in next year. I want, you know, and again, I'm going to say some things during this presentation. I promise I'm not humble bragging. I'm just trying to give you perspective on where I want you to be at and where you can be at. I want you to be in the very privileged position that I was in this year of being able to say, no, I have enough interviews. I'm not going to take this one. And that's a position that lots of my peers were in, and it's a really good place to be. And it lets you be very stress-free and comfortable going into into a match season. You know, yes, my hair has fallen out, but I'm still like stress-free and feeling good. All right, conflicts of interest. I have none to declare. Nobody is paying me. I have no vested interest other than being invested in all of you and being the vice president of this fine organization. So let's start with reasons why I'm probably not qualified to give this talk. I am not I'm not a lawyer. I am not a program director in emergency medicine. I am not your mother. I am not an internationally acclaimed author with best-selling novels on 6 continents. And I am not the academic advisor at your school, but sometimes the academic advisor at your school can be wrong, so be cautious. So why might I be qualified? As I am a little older and as I came to this in a slightly circuitous route, I had a privilege that a lot of people don't get when they're going to medical school, in that when you're going to medical school and that's your focus, you have to take a lot of pre-med classes, and it's all a lot of it is often very science-based, a lot of institutions, and you don't necessarily get the opportunity to flex your creative muscles at all, or to write and to explore. I did have a liberal arts education, which is, I think, served me well. I've previously published some creative writing. I wrote for a couple humor websites back in college, long ago and far away. I way over applied on ERAS this year, but I did have a greater than 50% yield on interview offers from the programs I applied to, which, depending on the numbers you look at, is pretty decent. And something that came up a lot during on the interview trail was my personal statement. It was something that came up that, you know, like a lot, and not just, hey, let's talk about this a little bit. It was program directors saying, hey, we really liked this. This gave us a good picture of you. And then our president at one point, when I was feeling unsure about it, I let her read it and she said it was good. So I don't know. All right. So when I say, oops, okay. So when I say that this is less boring, more sandwich, and when I tell you that your academic advisor at your school can be wrong, this is kind of what I mean by this. So I'd love to hear from you guys if your experience is different. But at my school, our academic advisor was very adamant about the hobbies section, and said, and she took this that I had written and she said, this is not what this is meant to be. You shouldn't have this much flavor in the hobby section. This section should say cooking, sandwiches, cycling, canoeing, video games, dogs. She wanted it to be a list of items. She saw this and she said, and as you can tell your academic advisor at your school or anybody else who gives you feedback, if you feel strongly about it, you can say, hey, I respect your opinion. I appreciate you looking at this. However, I disagree. This is my personal statement reflective of my app, and this is what I want to do. And I will tell you that sentence that I've underlined and read, the banh mi sandwich is the world's greatest food, was the single most talked about item in every interview that I had all year. I had program directors like excited to talk about this with me. And I want to also like point out to you the way that I phrased this. I did not say I like banh mi sandwiches. I didn't say I've eaten a lot of banh mi sandwiches. I didn't say that. I said it is the world's greatest food. Now, do I truly in my core believe that no food can surpass the banh mi sandwich? Maybe not necessarily, but that is an inflammatory statement. It's strong, it's bold, and it makes people want to challenge it. If you've ever heard, there's an adage on the internet that says, if you want the right answer to a question on the internet, don't ask the question. Say something wrong and somebody will jump out of the woodwork to correct you. And that's exactly what this does. It gets people excited to like engage in this conversation with you. It raises questions that they want answered. Sometimes that question is, what is a banh mi sandwich? If somebody's never had Viet food, then that's their question. Sometimes it's, why does Spencer like these? Sometimes it's, I want to argue with you about this. And so this is what I want you to do with your app. I want you to tell a story about a sandwich. All right, so as my disclaimer is that your mileage may vary. If any of you who wandered in here tonight are not applying emergency medicine, I would caution you against taking a lot of the advice I'm going to give, because like the environment in anesthesia, the environment in gen surge is going to be very different from the slightly irreverent take that I'm pointing you toward. This is the vibe of the specialty. This is the vibe of EM, and that's why this works here. I'm also just going to go ahead and throw this disclaimer out there. Just like I already said, I'm not trying to humble brag. This is me speaking from my experience and the things that I like and the things that I think work and the things that work for me. What I'm trying to help you with is to help you hone that to your own thing. I'm using some examples from my own work here, and that's not because I think that I wrote the best personal statement in all of ERAS this year, okay? I need you to know that I'm a humble man and I want to stay humble. And this is really just, I want you to take everything I say with a grain of salt and just recognize that this is my personal experience. So all that aside, hot tip number 1 for personal statements and ERAS, take USMLE. I'm sorry, I had to get that out of the way. Take step if you can. If it's not too late, if it's too late for step 1, just take step 2. I only took step 2. Just for some of my friends this last year, kind of the difference between me and them was that I took step 2 and they didn't. And some of the same programs looked them over and paid attention to me, and it definitely opened doors for me. So I know that that's not what a lot of your schools tell you, and I know it's not what you necessarily want to hear. It's not what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to spend the money. I didn't want to undergo the stress, but take USMLE. So now that we've got that out of the way, there's this adage about personal statements that was told to me, and I really, really love it. They will only hurt you if they're shitty, and they will only help you if they're phenomenal. And I kind of had to puzzle over that one for a minute when I first heard it, but it makes perfect sense. Most personal statements are going to fall in the middle of the bell curve. Like that's going to be your one standard deviation on either side. And that's an okay place to be. That's safe. That is your personal statement that gets in, tells the story, gets out. And you know what? It goes in the mind of that program director and out of the mind of that program director just about as quickly. That's your personal statement that meets the bare minimum standard. And that's fine. That is going to be most personal statements. That's going to be most people in this Zoom, probably. And as long as your app doesn't have any huge red flags that, you know, are going to drag you down, you've met the criteria for your personal statement. Some program directors are going to vibe with a little bit. You know, they're going to like what you got going on. They're like, well, you had a 285 on step, so cool. And they're going to invite you. Your goal is just to not fall toward the bottom. I mean, that's really what you want to do. And we're going to talk about several things that can pull you toward the bottom and ways to avoid that. But, you know, it's okay to be in the middle. We're not all going to get out here and hit home runs. So here are the goals that we're going to talk about. These are the real 5 things that I'm going to highlight that I think your personal statement needs to be. It needs to be tonally appropriate, which is a big challenge a lot of the time. It needs to be attention grabbing. It needs to be a true representation of you. It needs to not be riddled with a lot of errors, and it needs to get in and get out. It needs to not be overly long. So when we talk about tonally appropriate, we're talking about the topic that you're choosing. And so there are several questions that are being asked that this thing needs to answer. And the first is, why am I the hardcore skilled, beautiful, sweet smelling badass that you need to have on your team? Why do you as a program director want to invite me along with the 60 other people you're inviting over the 800 that applied to your program? They need to have that question answered. They need to know what is special about you. And that doesn't necessarily mean, all of our strengths are different. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're coming in with a background in nursing and paramedicine, or, you know, like I did. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're coming in with a ton of research experience like some people do. That just means that you need to highlight for them what's cool about you. Why are you fun to work with? Why are you going to be awesome? Why medicine is a minor question. That's your med school admission essay. You already wrote a great essay for that, or you wouldn't be here. And so that question, if you spend, you know, the bulk of your essay answering that question, then you've gone off the rails somewhere. You're wasting a lot of space in this essay. You're wasting a lot of time and mental real estate for the program director answering a question that they already know. They know that you want to help people. You know, they know that you're applying your academic interests in a meaningful way. What they need to know is also why emergency medicines. They not only need to know why are you going to be a great team member, why are you going to be somebody who's awesome as a resident, they need to know why you're going to be awesome at emergency medicine, why you chose this, what during your clinical experiences or during your childhood or whatever made you decide this. And why this program? Now, this one's tricky, and I think this is purely optional. And I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't write a single individualized essay this year. I applied EM and I applied EM-IM. I wrote separate personal statements for those, as you should. But in terms of individualizing it to the program, ultimately, I feel like that can come across as insincere if you don't truly have if there's not like 1 or 2 programs that you're like, yeah, man, I grew up in this one, you know, this one means a lot to me, and you can really tailor that. But if you're throwing in a couple sentences at the end just because you can, saying, oh, well, the Baylor College of Medicine, you know, their reputation precedes them, and I think that it would be a great fit for me or whatever. I can't endorse that. I don't think that that's going to you're going to get good mileage out of that. And I think it can actually hurt you, because if anybody's like me and they're going, okay, well, cool, you clearly just are copy pasting the name of the hospital out of here, and that's not going to come across great. So also, you don't need tragedy or overwhelming adversity. I am a person of privilege. I am coming from a distinctly middle-class background. I did not have to overcome any huge socioeconomic hurdles to get to where I am. I think I've had to work hard, but I have to acknowledge my privilege here. And that doesn't necessarily, like, that part of my story does not make for a compelling essay. You know, it's not one of those stories where you grow up in poverty and drag yourself out of it because you know your mom was going to night school, whatever. Those stories are incredible, and we need more of them in medicine. We need more people who overcame great adversity to get here. But that doesn't have to be your essay. And just because you don't have that story doesn't mean you're not interesting and that you don't have something to tell and to share. Your story is yours, and that's enough. And you need to be thinking about, what is it that pushes you always? Ignore the medicine part. Don't pay attention. Don't be thinking about why do I like clinicals? Why do I go to med school? Put that aside for a minute when you're brainstorming your topic. Think about you as a person. When you get excited about something, whether that's crocheting, or whether that's binge watching a TV show, or whether that's canoeing, you know, whatever. The last time you got into a project, you were building, you were creating, you were sharing, you were doing with friends, what was it that drove you? What are the character traits that really make you exceptional in that? And then think about how that relates to medicine and try to be introspective about how that has gotten you to where you are. Most importantly, I want you to let your passions shine through. The best parts of these essays, the best ones I've read, and the best parts of the one that I think I wrote are the parts where you can kind of just smell what I'm excited about, smell what that person's excited about through the paper. Like you can just see. I read one for a colleague, and I was like, he was talking about he's going into surgery. He was talking about the OR, and he was literally just talking about an empty OR, and he was talking about sights and smells and how I mean, I was just there, and I was like, okay, I would never have guessed it. This dude freaking loves the OR. Like he's all about it, and he's passionate about it, and I loved that. And it was my single favorite part about this essay that he wrote. So every one of you needs to write a paper that does that same thing. And a final brainstorming tip that I would give you is to think about how we present patients in the emergency department, and how we say, this is a 36-year-old female in bed 14 who's coming in with blah, blah, blah. Think about that as your one-liner. What is the one-liner that you would use to describe yourself? And you will also be, this as a bonus, you'll be asked this on the interview trail. And if you go ahead and have that prepared for yourself, for mine, when I got asked, I did not have anything prepared. And so mine was an empathetic goober with a heart for people. So have that ready, or like think about that. Think about what that one-liner is, and then expand that into your full paper. Think about those core values. We're really getting at the heart of what makes you tick, and you're writing your paper based on that. And so here's some things to avoid. And I've read a lot of award essays this year. I was on a committee that was reading through some stuff. I've read a lot. I read a lot of personal statements from my friends and some other people. I would strongly caution you to avoid anything that comes across as a savior complex. It can be difficult, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But the tone of what you write is so important, and the tone of the intent with which you write something. I can firmly believe that you write something with good and pure and honest intent. Sometimes when those things are being read, they come across as pompous or as a savior complex, whatever. Just be very cautious about anything where you talk about how you are, well, again, we'll get to this in a minute. Resume restating is also something to avoid. Your resume is right there. The ERAS application is basically a resume. It takes all of your stuff and it puts it in the format of a CV, and it lays it all out. That's already there. If you then spend your personal statement simply restating the things that you've done, oh, I was in this research lab. Oh, I loved going to this location this one time and, for 2 days and delivering medical care, whatever. And that's already outlined in your resume. You're not telling them anything new. You're not taking advantage of this opportunity to sell yourself. So definitely avoid that if you can. And resume restating essays also just tend to be pretty devoid of passion. They tend to not draw from that well that really excites you. And finally, and again, we're going to talk about this along with kind of the savior complex is punching down. Anything again that kind of, if you're talking about a migrant patient population or or another country that you went to or whatever, if you otherize the subjects of your essay too much, again, that's going to come across as a really terrible tone that you don't want to be setting and is not going to play well when somebody's reading your essay. And here's where we're going to talk about some other stuff. Yeah, this seems like a no-brainer, but I mean, in life, and especially in this essay, eliminate these kinds of words from your vocabulary. Any word that carries the weight of a judgment on it, junkie, sickler, anything that implies somebody is lesser, that reduces them to a set of symptoms or to their disease process. And also, I would caution you against any stories where you think that you won an argument. I had one that I really liked. I mean, it's one from my nursing days, and it's where I went toe to toe with a critical care attending on what I believed and still believe to this day to be substandard care for a very sick patient. And it's a good story of how I held my ground, and ultimately I was vindicated, and other physicians backed me. It does not play in writing. If I'm not here talking to you and telling this story and getting you to believe and curating the words and reading your response and tailoring how emphatic I am, which you can't do with writing. You don't know who's reading it necessarily. If I can't tell that story in my way and adapt it on the fly, it can just come across, and I could not write it in a way that consistently did not come across as I was being a belligerent asshole. And I don't believe I was. I still, but in writing, it was extremely difficult to sell. And so maybe you can do it if one of your core stories is really kind of something similar. But I would say this is probably something you want to try to avoid, because it is a sticky wicket, and you will not be able to write this as effectively as you want to. So all these things do happen. I've read essays that kind of make all these faux pas, and I just would hate to see any of you guys do that. So here's an example of something I'm kind of talking about, and this was an exaggerated example that I just cobbled together for this. So I sat down next to the homeless patient. The rank odor of his unwashed sneakers made my gorge rise, but I stayed strong. I reached out and held his hand, though it was grimy with the dirt of untold travels, and told him that everything would be okay. I wiped a single tear from my cheek after sanitizing my hands, of course, and left the room to report my progress to the attending. This is again, this is exaggerated. This is an elevated example, but I'm going to be honest with you. I've read a lot of stuff like this that really just kind of makes this person come across as pompous, as as God's gift to medicine. And again, you don't have to necessarily believe that's the intent that somebody wrote it with. I generally believe that people mean well, but it can come across very poorly in writing. So just be extra cautious. Oops. All right. So that's in summary, this is me policing your tone. Don't be a blowhard. Do be self-aware. Do be humble, please. Try to write these from a humble standpoint. And that's not to say don't gas yourself up. This is your opportunity to brag on yourself some. You are selling yourself. Again, what's the first question we're answering? Why am I the badass that you need on your team? You can do that. You can sell that. You can talk about why you're an effective team member, why you're an effective leader, why you're an effective clinical thinker, diagnostician, whatever makes you awesome. Sell that, but just retain that humility while you do it. All right. Next is eye-catching. So that was all of our topic selection and stuff. So things that grab readers: quotes, asterisk, in moderation. Humor, and again, this is my personal style. Powerful statements, definitive statements. The banh mi sandwich is the world's greatest food. Short paragraphs, and a fifth thing that grabs readers like tentacles. I don't know. Okay, so quotes. So this is from one of my favorite movies, Hot Fuzz. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a police officer, apart from the summer of 1979 when I wanted to be Kermit the Frog. I love this. I love this as a quote, because what does this do? If this was the beginning of an essay, if you literally had the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and this was the quote at the top with a paragraph break below, you as the reader read this and you go, okay, what the hell happened in 1979? What, Kermit the Frog, where did that come from? Like this nice like curveball at the very end of the sentence that you're like, okay, he's going to say he wanted to be a doctor. No, he wants to be Kermit the Frog. It begs for a story to be told. There is so much behind this, and there's so much behind this. And what this follows up with is that this story needs to be heard. There's more to this. Now, I will caution you, quotes can be overused, and they are overused in bad writing. And so I had another version of my essay. I'll show you a bit from it here in just a second, a whole other version that I tried to write that I was like, okay, so I'm going to do like a quote, and then it's going to be like a little paragraph about what was happening in my life, that whoever said that, and they're all going to be related to medicine. I had this idea for like 5 or 6 quotes with little paragraphs beneath. It was a very unconventional essay. It didn't work at all. It did not work at all. I could not make it work. Quotes, it can be too much of a crutch. And again, you're using the real estate of your essay on stuff that's like not you. So just be cautious with that. Another thing that can grab a reader is humor. I'm not talking about knock jokes. I'm not talking about, using funny swear words the way Spencer tries to be funny and puts them in his presentation sometimes, but a little irreverence. I mean, just a little irreverence can go a long way. You need to know your audience. Again, this is about the vibe of emergency medicine. We all know what goobers most emergency medicine doctors can be, and how much they appreciate a little irreverence sometimes. There are exceptions. I'm not going to tell you to apply to Harvard EM with with a bunch of jokes in your personal statement. I mean, it all depends on where you're setting your sights. But I applied to a lot of academic programs, a lot of highbrow academic programs, and I got a lot of love. So don't think that like nobody can joke, okay? But just recognize that your tone does not have to be just deadly serious, straight as an arrow. You can have some fun with this. You can let them have fun with you. So this is an example. This is from the failed version of my essay that I couldn't make work. And so this is an example of both quotes and humor. So this is a real quote that my mother has reminded me about since time immemorial. Did you know that there are two bones in your arm, the slobberous and the dingitus? Okay, so this ties together a lot of stuff we've talked about, right? So first of all, I've said something completely wrong, and it immediately makes everybody with a type A personality go, those aren't the bones in the arm. No, it's the radius and the ulna. Those are not the bones in the arm. No, he got this wrong. So they're already wondering like why the slobberous and the dingitus. It begs the question of a story. It's goofy. It sounds absurd. It might make you chuckle. And so this is just an example of some things that can work. I like this paragraph. I think this was an effective piece of writing. I could not make the rest of the essay work this way, because obviously it's too goofy. So I think I swung too far here, but again, these things can work for you in moderation. Powerful statements. Don't incite controversy for controversy's sake. We are not founding political movements in our personal statement essays here, okay? We're talking about, like, you don't need to poke at any bears. You don't need to be trying to make any huge statements unless you want to, unless that is like part of your identity for this, then go nuts. Don't pander or exploit, again, by being too inflammatory. And again, this is hinting at a story that just needs to be told. This is you leaving them wanting more. To use the parlance of my Texas roots, don't just give them the milk, make them buy the whole dang cow. So here's the example. Here's the first line, the opening line from the personal statement that I submitted. And on Christmas Eve of 1984, my mother unexpectedly went into spontaneous labor at only 28 weeks gestation, although my sister Katie would survive thanks to the efforts of numerous blah, blah, blah. So what does this do? It sets stakes. The stakes are high. This is a premature labor. This is 1984. The state of premature babies was not great in 1984, right? We've been pushing the envelope on how premature babies can be since then. It's close to home. It's familial. It's my mother and my sister. It's historical. It's telling something that happened a long time ago. It's 1984. And so there are multiple things that this sentence does. Like this is a powerful opening sentence because I'm laying out these chess pieces and I'm saying, do you want to know where this goes? And hopefully the answer from a program director is yes. They read that and they go, okay, so the stakes are high. Now, where do we go from here? Of course, this is all happening very quickly. By this time, they've already finished the essay in the time it took me to explain that to you. But I would say it's important to think about these powerful statements, whether it's that the banh mi sandwich is the world's greatest food, or whether it's, my mother and my sister both almost died during childbirth. These things are, it stakes, it matters, and it will show through in your essay. It will give your essay teeth. All right, visual appeal is important. There's not much you can do with an essay because you can't do any fancy formatting like this weird gender reveal thing that I did in my PowerPoint background, which this is an ugly PowerPoint, I'm sorry. But what I'm telling you is no walls of text. Learn how to delineate your ideas, learn how to do paragraphs. Please use paragraphs. Please, I beg you, use paragraphs. Split, if you see anything longer than like 1.5 inches on your paper, just find a place to split it and split it. Make it make sense. But it's so much easier to digest shorter paragraphs in this context of a personal statement than something longer. $10 words, you get one, okay? Don't thesaurize your personal statement. You're gonna end up twisting the meaning by selecting a simile that's not really a simile, or not a simile, a synonym, a synonym that's not really a synonym. I have a colleague of mine to thank for this one that made it into my EM/IM essay. I had said something about, I'm echoing. I had said something about the highs and lows of medical education, and he was like, no, the turbulent vicissitudes of medical education. I was like, okay, fine, we'll leave it in. And I had one of my interviews, the program director said, turbulent vicissitudes. What does that mean to you? And I swear to God, that was a veiled like threat. Like, dude, I know you had this essay ghost written. And I was like, no, and so I told him what turbulent vicissitudes means, and he was fine with it. But it can be seen as like, if you do this more than once, you're either flexing or, you're trying to prove a point, like whatever. So just be cautious with this. Absolutely flex it up a little bit, show them, like just flirt against it and say, yeah, cool, I know some big words, and then move on. So if you want to do that. Honesty. Do not fabricate. You're going to meet so many people on the interview trail who are so experts at everything under the sun. And if you try to fib and say that you know a lot about hiking, because everybody puts hiking in their hobbies, right? They're going to be like, oh, where have you hiked? Tell me about the hiking. And I mean, they're going to put you on the spot, and you're going to have to explain yourself. And if you try to claim that you really like to cook, or you play video games, like whatever, it's gonna bite you. And then, I mean, lying's wrong, so like don't lie anyway. But I just tell the truth, because it's not going to be a good look when you stammer and can't really explain about this hobby that you allegedly have, or this life experience. Just don't do it. All right, so on writing in general, I just want to throw this out there. Writing is not easy, and it is not everyone's gift, and I don't feel like it's my gift, and I'm not expecting everyone in here to feel like it's theirs, or to really feel like you're just going to knock it out of the park. That's fine. And my wife cautioned me on this. I say creative writing is especially difficult. I consider this to be a creative writing exercise. I really do. I think that the way the school would like you to do it, the way that your school has probably advised you to do it, is not a creative writing exercise. And let me back up and like talk about something that I meant to talk about at the beginning. Your school has one goal for you. Your school's goal is for you to match. Your school's goal is not for you to match in emergency medicine. And I hate to say that, and some schools are probably better about that than others. But they want the number. They want the matched number. And that's why they tell you to apply FM as a backup, IM as a backup. And that's no shade on FM or IM. That's what they want. And in so doing, they want you to write the safest freaking essay that lands right in the middle of that bell curve, that is so plain and so uninteresting, but it ticks all the boxes, and it will get you enough interviews to match. And that's fine. But I'm telling you that my goals and your academic advisor's goals don't necessarily align. And maybe some of you have saints for academic advisors who are willing to stick their necks out to get you where you want to go. And that's wonderful. And I'm not faulting academic advisors for being safe, because that's literally their job. That's what pays their salaries. So they don't view this as a creative writing exercise. I do. I'm telling you that I think that this is something that you should approach with your heart and your soul, and really like put yourself into it. And so that's why I'm emphasizing all these things. Again, this is my point of view. You can take it or leave it. And I hope it works out for either way. But creative writing is especially difficult, is what I'm going to say about that, especially if you're not used to it. But technically proficient writing should not be hard. You are the highest IQ people I know, right? You guys are very, very smart. If you can learn genetics and you can learn embryology, even for like the couple weeks that you learn embryology and then dump it because you passed that part of the exam, you can learn the rules of like the big rules of grammar and syntax, and you can follow them. And so I'm just gonna say, you've got to avoid these common errors that I see way, way, way too much. Match your tenses. If you are speaking in the past tense, continue to speak in the past tense unless you have a tense shift and you've been like reflecting on this prior experience and now you're speaking in the present. Okay. I read way too much stuff that jumps from past to present to past, and the tenses are all mixed up, and sometimes from first person to third person. Don't do that. All these problems are like a record scratch for someone like me. I'm enjoying the music of your essay, and then I come across something that just, frankly, it just seems dunderheaded to me, and then it just takes me right out. Whatever I was enjoying, whatever story you were telling that I was wrapped up in, whatever, it's like listening to music, and then there's a record scratch, like it, or just skipped. It's tough. Don't overcomplicate your sentences. Don't try to write, if you're not confident that you can write something that's big and compounded sentence without like mucking it up in the middle, like I just mucked up the structure of that sentence while speaking it, then don't do it, or let somebody else help you with it. Don't just string thing after thing after thing together with commas. Vary your sentence length. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Change up your starting words. I mean, this is stuff that we all remember from middle school, right? And high school. Don't start every sentence I did, I was, I saw, I acted, I talked. Change it all up. Find ways to vary this. Think about alternative ways that you can start these sentences. Learn to use and love, and I'm very guilty of this, learn to use and love the em dash, the colon and semicolon, and parentheticals. I way overuse parentheticals in my writing. I have to go back and like delete parentheticals because I'm always like wanting to slip some extra little sub idea into the sentence that I've got going on. But like the em dash, I love the em dash. It is the single most useful piece of punctuation in all of English. You can use em dash as basically anything and it works. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then Google em dash when we're done and you can read some examples, but I use those all the time. Spell check helps, but it's not perfect. In fact, if we back up here, I forgot to point this out. My wife showed this to me when I was letting her proofread this PowerPoint. And on my hobbies section that I proofread probably a dozen times, that my wife and I are passionate about cooking and the sharing of food. Spencer, you dog, you're sitting here speaking to us from your ivory tower, telling us all these things not to do, and there you did it. That made it into my final app, folks. That is a screenshot from the PDF of my final ERS app. So boo on me, but also take heart because that didn't seem to hurt me at all. So spell check will help, but it's not perfect. It obviously doesn't catch that. So and it will absolutely not catch like a synonym if you mess this up. So when we're talking about sentence length, I love this quote by Gary Provost. I think this is so cool. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I'm certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. And look at that, he put an em dash right there after the word cymbals. Just a man after my own heart. So, all right. So choosing editors. This piece needs to be edited many, many times. And it will likely result in you writing a completely different version of what you were writing, and that's okay. So I won't say this is the first person you need, but one of the people you need is someone with a rectal foreign body. You need someone like me who has an absolute stick in their ass about grammar and syntax and spelling. You need somebody who is going to make that hard grammar fascist pass on your essay and make sure that it is airtight. And we'll talk about that in a second. Someone who will hurt your feelings. And I don't mean literally hurt your feelings, not somebody who's going to be rude to you, but somebody who maybe isn't as personally invested in you, or maybe that one friend who just like will always tell you when you have corn in your teeth. Like, find that person. This can be just somebody you don't know well from Twitter, like would be a great person for this. Someone who is just not going to be like, oh yeah, it's great, I love it, you did so good, bye. Like that they're gonna like actually give you the feedback that you need. You need someone who just vibes with the specialty. And some of these can be the same person, but like ideally these are all gonna be different people. Someone who just gets emergency medicine, who knows what they're looking for in emergency medicine. I'm trying to be that person for you today to tell you, to remind you of, like, you're not writing this for a general surgery attending. You're not writing this for cardiology attending. You're writing this for an emergency medicine attending, and keep that in mind. And so, somebody who just kind of gets the audience that you're going for. Someone who knows your favorite color. Someone who loves you dearly, who knows what makes you tick. If that's a very close romantic partner or a sibling, that's excellent. Somebody who has known you, I wouldn't necessarily say your mom, because moms are like typically kind of blinded to this kind of thing, right? They're going to do the, oh honey, it's so good, I love you. But somebody who can speak to what drives you, who can remember and would tell other people about the badass things you've done. Somebody who would brag on you, like at a dinner. that kind of person. And finally, somebody who will gas you up. I truly want somebody to read this essay who is not going to give you any actionable feedback, who is just going to do the, oh my gosh, it's so good. Like, no, but really, it's so good. I would change nothing, no notes. Like, find that person, because there's going to come a point, and there came a point for me where that's what I needed to hear, because I was like, oh, I don't know that I like it. Like, I'm full of doubt. Someone who'll gas you up. It's a great person to have in your corner. All right. When you get these people editing your paper, put your ego aside. Some of the stuff that you hear may hurt your feelings, or you may go, no, you misread that. You heard that wrong. That's not what I meant by that. Remember, the intent of how you write it is not necessarily how the perceived intent is by your reader. So if somebody tells you that and you go, well, that's not what I meant by that, listen, think about how you can reword and reframe. So by that, I mean, take the feedback. You want the feedback, but don't live by it. If I had taken my academic advisor's feedback on my hobbies section, I would have not had some very interesting conversations on the interview trail, and I might not have gotten as many interviews. I don't know. I mean, maybe it mattered, maybe it didn't, but don't be afraid. If you truly feel convicted about something and you are like, no, this is the right way to do it, I'm down. I'm not going to take that piece of advice. That's fine. Don't be afraid to rewrite. If you feel like you're struggling to kind of fit a square peg in a round hole and you just can't quite figure out how to rephrase this thing that is, you thought this was the cornerstone of your essay and it's just not working, dump it. Don't be afraid to dump it. Start again, find a different angle. Maybe it'll come easier this time. Some of these are like passing a kidney stone, and you can make it better. I mean, if you start again, knowing what you know, having ruminated on all the thoughts that you already had, you're going to find a better way to write it. And then when it's been edited by those people and you've made changes to it, send it back again. Get another pass. All right. This is my hot tip. This is my grammar fascist talking. Having an essay proofread so that it is completely free of grammatical errors, unusual sentence structure, changes in tense, and all these other common writing pitfalls that we've talked about is the bare minimum standard you should be meeting. If you send your essay to someone and you like where it's your first draft, and they send it back and they fix all the grammar and the syntax and whatever, and say, okay, I fixed the spelling and whatnot, it's good. It is not ready. Having one that is technically airtight that's just the floor. That's the bar to clear. And if that's all you do, then you've written a passable essay. You've written a sufficient essay, probably. I mean, maybe you're inspired and your first drafts are amazing. But that in itself, this is where people's confusion comes up all the time, is that like, they're like, oh, well, I fixed the errors with it, so like it's good now, right? And no, technical perfection is not good writing, but it is the bare minimum standard that you should be meeting. So, but a good essay, if you really do have inspired writing and you've told an excellent story and you've mucked it up with this weird, crappy compound sentence in the middle that you put too many commas in, whatever, that will hurt you. If I'm grading your essay, if I'm the program director, which I'm not, but I mean, like I said, there's a record scratch that might hurt you. So I would strongly caution against that. All right. Hot tip number 2, don't double space after periods. It's 2023. If I see anybody doing that, I'll come to your house. Not really. I'm sorry. I shouldn't threaten you. You're very sweet to be here. All right. As far as the length, don't overstay your welcome. This is a get in, get out essay. Program directors are tired, sleepy little dudes who still have to read 20 applications before bed every night for months. They do not want to sit through anything over about a page, and they will not sit through anything over about a page. I have heard it from program directors' mouths that when they were talking, like one thing that was said to me, they said, man, I'm usually like skimming essays. I saw yours and I read the first sentence. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give this one a little more attention. I mean, that was nice. That felt nice. It gave me a warm and fuzzy, but also I was like, well, what about all the ones you're skimming? Like those people worked really hard on those. So don't make it over long. Be Goldilocks. Okay, break into somebody's house, eat their food, sleep in their bed, and get out before you've eaten. Not too long, not too short. Approximately 1 page. Mine was 763 words. So about 750, I think, is good. When it's formatted for ERAS, when it's plugged into that little text box, 750 words is about a page. So trim it down. Odds are whatever you write first is going to be about a paragraph too long, about 200 or 300 words too long, maybe. and you're just gonna have to find ways to cut it. I mean, I was literally finding ways to restructure sentences so that I could cut out like the. You know, I mean, it was you got to be ruthlessly efficient, and this can come late in your editing process. Write whatever length you got to write to start, and then undergo the process of editing. Okay, don't feel like you have to constrain yourself to this to start. All right, we're nearing the end here. So quick notes on the ERAS app itself, because I wanted this talk to be about both the personal statement and the written part of the ERAS app, right? So during your your experiences section on ERAS, where you're going to put that from 2017 to 2019, you were a barista at Starbucks and you had this position, you know, you're filling these in like on the ERAS thing. And then there's a box for details. And every year there's this huge argument, generally on Twitter, lots of places. Everybody agonizes over paragraphs versus bullet points. It doesn't freaking matter. It does not matter. Don't waste any of your life worrying about paragraphs versus bullet points. Literally just pick one. It does not matter which. If you agonize over it, I will come to you. I won't come to your house. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. It's fine. Pick one. Just pick one. I did paragraphs. What I do want you to do is brainstorm verbs. If you've ever put significant effort into writing a CV, you know that this part, that, or if you've worked on your LinkedIn or whatever, that details portion should say stuff like facilitated, organized, grew. You know, it should generally be past tense verbs. And I don't want to see a single verb repeated in your whole freaking ERAS app. Not once. Every single one should be unique. You can thesaurize this a little bit if you want. Don't do it in your essay, but you can do it here. If you're like, man, I can't think of another word for synergized. You know, like just come up with something. But just give it variety. I'm not going to say that this like truly matters a whole lot, but this is typically a very boring part of the app, and this can make it a little bit more dynamic. And finally, I want you to work that hobby section. Do not put hiking, cooking, cycling, dogs. Don't do it, please. Think about it like a dating app, man. Like you got to be eye catching. You got to get that attention where you can get it. And so. All right, it's question open discussion time. While we do that, I'm going to go ahead and put this up there. I have a QR code, and also if you are using your phone to do this Zoom, so you can't use your phone to take a picture of your phone, there's the bit.ly link down on the bottom. This is to a Google Drive that has these slides, as well as a copy of my personal statement and a copy of my ERAS app. Again, not because I think I have the end all be all, but just because if you read it and you like it and you go, okay, cool, I think this was a valuable hour of my time to have spent, then, you know, and you can, please don't plagiarize it, but you can maybe look at it. If you read it and you don't like it and you go, man, I'm sorry you wasted an hour of your time, but hopefully there's some stuff there. So questions, like, let's talk.
Yo.
Oh, sorry. You can go first.
No, go for it.
I was just wondering if you had any advice for people writing their personal statements in regards to speaking about yourself. I'm not very good